Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Finlo Costain. Today's headlines: new technology could help to re-establish more intensive shepherding. A switch from monogastric to ruminant production could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 5% globally. And researchers have concluded that red meat is not intrinsically harmful. Some farming groups have articulated a fear that the new management plan for Banai Bruchainiog Brecon Beacons National Park will mean a sharp reduction in sheep numbers. I spoke to Phil Stocker, the chief executive of the National Sheep Association and chair of the Black Mountains Land Use Partnership, and asked him whether the new management plan would deliver a substantial reduction in sheep numbers.
I would say absolutely not. This is about trying to find new ways of a wide range of land users, stakeholders, if you like, trying to get what they want and do things as well as they possibly can. And the area of the Brecon Beacons National Park that I'm involved in is the Black Mountains. And I would say there's absolutely no chance or even an ambition really to reduce sheep numbers. It's more about trying to make sure that the grazing is done in a way that preserves some of the peatland and the heather, and probably improve some of those plant communities by getting some of those more invasive plants such as bracken under control.
So that's what I was going to ask you, is will it change the way that sheep are grazed in those areas, do you think?
I think it will over time, although it's worth recognising and remembering that these areas of common grazing, and they're all privately owned, or pretty much all privately owned. So for the new Brecon Beacons management plan to really deliver, it is about bringing people together and getting organizations and individuals to take action and to encourage them and enable them and support them financially to make some of those changes. So I can see it having an effect over time, but I don't think we should expect that immediately or even in the short term it's going to lead to any great change in the way that those areas are grazed and farmed.
Thinking about the Brecon Beacons, but perhaps more broadly as well, the public often associate sheep with overgrazing. And I wonder how shepherds can avoid overgrazing, and whether sheep can actually help with the regeneration of building Britain's natural capital.
It's a really good question. And, I think the perception that sheep are related to overgrazing, and the fact that our hills are overgrazed, it's a hangover or carryover really from the 80s and the 90s, where farmers were paid a headage payment. They were paid a sum of money based on how many sheep they kept. And I mean, the natural reaction to that is, well, I'll keep some more sheep then. If I'm going to get more money, I'll keep more sheep. And so in a way that artificially pushed sheep numbers to a high level. And when those payments disappeared in the early 2000s, it took a period of 3 or 4 years to, I suppose, the actions on farms to respond to that. And sheep numbers have definitely fallen due to the fact that those hedge payments were removed. But they've also fallen in upland and common areas. I would say most, if not all, upland common areas would have seen sheep numbers reduce, partly because most of those areas are involved in agri-environment schemes that have paid farmers and compensated farmers for reducing those numbers. So, on the Brecon Beacons and the Black Mountains, I would say that sheep numbers now are probably 50% of what they would have been back in the 80s and the 90s. So they've already reduced. And I think we're now seeing areas that you can argue are undergrazed, as well as some areas that, it might be nice to relieve the grazing pressure as well. So this is all about trying to find new ways of going about things to deliver good, productive sheep management alongside great habitats, good environments, and a protection of peatland.
So is it just about sheep numbers and having a reduced number of sheep, or is it about the way that they're physically managed when they're in those upland areas?
Yeah, it is about the way they're physically managed in upland areas. And I think years ago, many people would have heard of the term of hefting sheep. And, that's a way of, over generations of sheep actually training them really to stay within their natural areas. And, that is an very old traditional system that was linked with some of our native breeds as well. And over this last 20 or 30 years, there's been a lot of pressure on those really traditional systems. There's been a lot of pressure on breeds and genetics. And I would suggest that there has been some breakdown of that hefted system. So we have sheep that are out there basically ranging. They're not getting the level of shepherding that they would have done in years gone by. And of course, in more intense shepherding, means more time, and time costs money. And we know that all of our farming industry, our food industry, is under financial pressure. And to think that we're going to easily reinvest that resource, time management for a really intense shepherding, is difficult to see. So I think this is an area where we need to look at some new technology. I mean, we've seen the introduction of
just
electronic collars. Sorry,
sorry. Let me just break in, because I just, I think it would be really helpful to explain the term hefting for those who aren't familiar with it, because it's a remarkable thing.
Yeah, it is a remarkable thing. It's a remarkable thing, and it's a remarkable attribute of sheep. But it's really that they learn to live in the areas that they belong in, effectively, and even with no boundaries, with no fences, with no roads, they'll tend to stay within areas that they know and they're hefted to. And it's a generational thing. So it happens in flocks where usually the flock regenerates itself by keeping its own female replacements from the flock. And if the mothers behave in that way and stay in a certain area, then the offspring will as well. So they become trained, if you like, to stay in a certain area.
So that's the traditional way of hefting, and you were just going to go on to say that there's now perhaps a technical fix for a sort of a modern way of hefting.
Well, I think that this is what we've got to look at. I think, because to think that we're going to get that shepherding back, that intense shepherding back, is going to be a real challenge, because I'd say, time costs money, effectively. But we've seen the introduction of electronic collars, for cattle. So you can set up on your smartphone through GPS mapping an area, and you train the cattle to stay inside it. You put an electronic collar around them, and when they get trained, that they get a little a very small electric shock when they get close to the edge of their boundary. The collar sets off a little beep, so they get a warning as to before they get a shock, and it trains them to stay within an area. And wherever you are, you could be 100 miles away, and you could change the boundary on your smartphone so that you could extend them or move them. It's an incredible technology. Now, they are expensive. They're around about £200 a collar, and then there's an annual fee as well. So to get that technology to work for sheep is we're still some way away from that, but there's some good trial work going on in Ireland and in France as well. So that sort of technology, you could see, could really help this. What I would say is the need for more intense shepherding of sheep.
That was Phil Stocker from the National Sheep Association. More about this and our other headline news on our website, 8point9.com. That's all for now. We're back on Friday. Thanks for watching.